session. And we are going to get started here. Okay, hope everybody can see that. Again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Okay, we're going to have to do that again. Hold on a second. All right, let's try that again. Okay, if you all could please keep your microphones muted during the presentation, that would be most helpful. Again, this is the Meath County Council Leaf Mold Composting Project for autumn 2025. Thank you for joining us this evening. What I'd like to do is first thank the county for their generous sponsorship of this opportunity for you all and for engaging me. This is our second year doing this. We had a sort of a pilot last year, big expansion this year to 23 groups. So thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all in your individual communities. This evening, what we're going to do is first talk about the basics of composting. So the biology and essentials of composting that creates the foundation for the work we're going to be doing for making leaf mold. We're going to talk about how to make the cages. Lucky you, we get to do that all together. More importantly is where we need to put the leaf cages, and we have this workshop ahead of time so you guys can meet as a group and sort of powwow about where you might want to put them. So on the day that we can look at the 2, 3, or 4 areas you have in mind, and then together we will pick the appropriate locations. After that, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of how to make the leaf mold. It's very easy. It's the simplest way to make good compost. We will troubleshoot 2 of the most common problems and discuss that and the remedies for that. We will then lay out how the program works, the next steps, which are the workshops on site that Bernadine has put a schedule together for you all, and then we'll take questions and answers. So here we go. First thing I wanted to sort of talk about is why should we bother? Why should we bother making leaf mold? Well, obviously we can save money. For communities, it's saving money on disposal of leaf mold. Even if it's going to a composting facility or a brown bin, it still costs. Also, we can save money on the purchase of soil additives, compost products, mulch, things we use in the garden, so that we can make our own, which is better than anything you can buy at the store. We make great weed-free compost, absolutely beautiful stuff. I'll have some samples of the mulch and compost so you can all see where we're going when we get together and meet. The other couple reasons that are not listed here is that we can clear the sidewalks and keep things safe, keep it from being slippy. We can keep the leaves out of the drainage system so that we can have, free-flowing drains. And also by doing all these things and keeping things on site and not having to move things around, we can save the planet and cut down on greenhouse gases. Okay, so those are some of the reasons why we want to bother with leaf mold composting. I'd like to turn our attention now to the composting essentials. And what I'd like to say to folks is composting is like farming. And what we're doing is we're farming aerobic microbes. Aerobic means in the presence of oxygen. These are all the microorganisms that live in the environment. And we just create the right conditions for them to thrive and survive. And like any good farmer, we need to give our livestock food, air, and water. And then they'll do their work to promote the decay of biodegradable materials, our leaves, into a lovely humus-like substance called compost. The composting is a biological process, and it involves all these decomposers. And so here's a picture of a lot of the critters and creatures involved with composting. And this is an ecosystem. All right. All these organisms interact with one another and act like any other ecosystem. But with every ecosystem, it's fed with a food chain. It starts with the organic residuals in the lower right-hand corner, or biodegradable materials, or leaves in this instance. And all the organisms in the blue are the organisms that feed directly on the food. So the worms, the bacteria, the mold, the fungus, all these things are actually consuming these organic residuals. The second level of consumers, which are the organisms in the darker green color in the middle, are actually munching on and consuming all the creatures and microorganisms that are below in the blue. And the predators of the system are the ones at the top, the beetles, the centipedes, the pseudoscorpions, the mites, and all these other creatures that eat the creatures below. So it's kind of like the rabbits eat the grass and the foxes eat the rabbits, okay? So all these organisms are important and they play a role in the composting process. It starts out with the bacteria, and then it's finished off with earthworms and molds and funguses to help sort of turn the product into a lovely compost. The four main organisms that are involved with composting are the bacteria, as I said earlier, the actinomycetes, the fungi, and worms. And so let's take a closer look at what we have here. The bacteria are the first to colonize the pile, and they do most of the hard, heavy lifting. Afterwards, the actinomycetes and the worm and the actinomycetes and the fungus come in, and they're very good at breaking down the cellulose or the woody materials. And in leaves, we do have some cellulose because it is high in carbon. And then the worms come in and munch things away and leave us with that lovely worm poop compost that is so valuable and rich for the garden soil and stimulates plant growth. That's the biology. It's very simple. All the organisms come on the materials that we're trying to compost, and all we're doing is creating the right conditions for them to thrive and take off. As I said, these are the 5 essentials of composting. They start out with a balanced diet of green and brown materials, the food for the composting critters and creatures, right? The next essential is the particle size or surface area because composting happens from the surface inward. We don't have to worry about this because leaves are very flat, have a lot of surface area. But the important thing is the next essential is moisture. And moisture is needed for all living things. But if we can visualize the fact that the film of moisture that surrounds the leaves is where the composting organisms, the bacteria, the fungus, the mold, that's where they live. So without that film of moisture, there's no place for the composting creatures and no composting will take place. Next is aeration. The piles are big enough to maintain moisture, but also to allow air to flow through the pile and keep it aerobic. And then we need a critical mass of material to sustain the composting process, hold moisture in the pile. And when the bin is too small, it can dry out or get too wet. So we've got an ideal size for you in terms of the cage size. That's what we're looking at, folks. Leaves. They do take a little longer to compost than other materials because they're so high in carbon, but that's okay. The microbes pull nitrogen from the air that's needed to help with the breakdown process. It just takes a little longer, and we just have to be patient to create either a leaf mold mulch or a leaf mold compost. This diagram actually shows you the 3 composting particles with the film of moisture that surrounds them. The film of moisture holds all the composting creatures. They have the food to the inside. The air pockets in the compost pile provides oxygen so that we keep the creatures all happy. Now, how are we going to make the leaf mold cages? I'm going to bring out this fencing material. Okay, we're going to unroll it We're going to make a cage that's 1.25 meters in diameter. This will be large enough to hold enough moisture within the pile over the 2-year period. And we'll talk about this because this is very important. The two essential ingredients for making leaf mold are leaves and water. Two people are needed to make the cages, to measure them out in terms of size and then to cut them. And then I have this handy stapler that I use to assemble them and put them together. As the little ends to the cage can be sharp, we're asking folks to please bring gloves to protect your hands. I know that Bernadine will have some extra gloves. I always have extra too, but bring the gloves that you are comfortable with to protect your hands so you don't get cut. So I have a stapler that holds the cages together. You can use wire or cable ties to hold the cage together or put the lids on the top. We'll be giving you cable ties to attach the lids. The cages are 1.25 meters in diameter, and we'll take a little picture, show you a picture of one. You don't need stakes to hold the bin in place. Once the cage is full, it will stay in place, not collapse. It won't move. It won't blow away. It's filled with leaves and it'll be just fine. This is what they look like. Let's turn our attention now to where we want to place the leaf cages. This is very important. The first and foremost thing we need to do is find a nice shady location near the trees where the leaves are, so we don't have to cart the leaves all over the place. Just makes life easier and less work. But shady is important because we want to be able to maintain the moisture within the leaf mold pile. It's also important to be near a source of water. So if you're in an estate and we can place the cages near a neighbor or person on your committee that has an outdoor tap, all the better. We also need to keep the cages away from ivy, bindweed, and briars, okay, because these little weeds are everywhere in Ireland and they will climb all over the cages. And if they get into the compost, when you spread the compost around, you will inadvertently start to spread the ivy, bindweed, or briars in the areas that you're applying and using your compost. Now, we can put them near, but we need to keep an eye on them. I have weed barrier, or I've got a new solid plastic sheeting that can help keep the weeds at bay and away from underneath. But we also want to keep it away from any wall with huge amounts of ivy, just because the ivy can jump on over. They sniff it, and they're just going to get all curious, and they're going to come over and invade the cage to get the nutrients and the water. We also want to hide them away and keep them away from major access roads or highly accessible or visible areas because we don't want the cages to be abused or a source for or a site where people are going to fly tip and dump things, not put their doggy do bags, all this other kind of stuff. So we've got some ways to prevent that, and we'll be discussing that in just a few minutes. So here's a nice shady location where we have in Castleknock here in the County Dublin area, where we have, these are behind some bushes, nice against the wall, not too many weeds there, but you see two pallet composters and a nice cage there of leaves in the front to the left. Nice, lovely location, shady. The source of water's across over that wall. So the neighbor just throws the hose over and then we have some water. We can be close to a water butt, a water tap, a pond or a creek, anything will do, but we do need water, especially when the autumn time is dry. Last autumn, we had 6 weeks without rain from the end of September to early November. So we got dry leaves, and when we put them in the cage, we need to get them wet. This year, we're getting a little more rain, so that does help. Here's a cage which is built too small and dries out, but also is now being invaded by briars. And you can see they're jumping all over it. So we be very careful. And once this happens, we need to be able to cut them away and pull them away from the cage. If there are weeds or trees, we will help and have two different kinds of weed barrier we can provide you to prevent invasion upwards from tree roots or weeds. The weed barrier can be many layers of cardboard or a plastic weed barrier, which we will supply if needed. Just depends on the site and the location, and we will evaluate that when we come out and make a decision together. Here's a cage. We were on Griffith Avenue in Dublin City. Uh, as you know, there's a double row of trees on either side of Griffith Avenue, and the trees particularly were very hungry and looking for water, and they found the cages as an easy source of both nutrients and water, and they came right up into the cages, up more than a foot or more into the cages. That just makes the harvesting the compost more difficult. And because the roots are sucking out all the moisture, the composting process stops. So we're not going to be able to make leaf mold. So we've got now a new thick layer of polythene that we put under the cages if they're near large trees, and we avoid then the tree roots coming up into the cage. Here's two large cages at a community garden on top of many layers of cardboard ready to go. We also will give signs on the cages to educate people about what you're doing. Plus, it helps prevent fly tipping. That's if people read. This is the sign we will provide you with, which says that the cages are for wet leaves only, and it's for recycling leaves into compost and no other green waste or rubbish. And this is very important. We don't want people using the cages as their little dump spot. And I'll tell you a few stories about what we have found recently. We had one community, for example, just put 4 cages out on their green, left them open, didn't put the sign on. And all they did was collect branches and everything but leaves in the cages. We had to clear them out and take them away last weekend. For those cages that are visible and could be abused, we will install lids. Bernadine has been so kind to actually provide you with a lid for each cage that we're going to provide you. Each cage will have a sign as well. Here's a setup in Dublin City with a a lid that goes over 4 of the cages. Here's another setup here. We will provide you with individual lids on your cages. All right, so that's basically where to put the cages and what you're going to get. The composting process for making leaf mold compost is very easy. It is the simplest way to make a good weed-free compost. It just takes time. In 1 year, we can make a leaf mold mulch. A mulch is anything we apply to the surface of the soil to keep weeds down and to keep moisture in the soil. And as it breaks down and as we irrigate through it or rain goes through it, it carries nutrients down to the root zone of the plants and helps to feed the plants in the soil. If we have the patience to wait 1.5 to 2 years, we will make a lovely weed-free compost. I'll have samples of both for you to take a look at when I come out and visit so you can see where we're going. The first thing we're going to do is fill the cages with wet leaves. Now, this is important. We're only going to take leaves from deciduous trees, no leaves from evergreens. So no holly, no laurel, no rhododendron leaves, no pine or fir trees. Now, a few pine needles, no big deal, but we're not going to put bags and bags of evergreens into the cages. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. One is to gather the leaves after a heavy rain or a heavy morning dew, and we can just put them directly into the cage. If we collect the leaves when they're dry, then we're going to have to mix them and water them as we fill the cage. We cannot fill the cage with dry leaves to the top and expect to get them wet thoroughly by just sprinkling water on the top. I don't care how long we soak it. You can put the hose on it for an hour. you will still not get the leaves wet down at the bottom. So we have to mix and water as you go. Now, I suggest that you actually have a few bags of leaves when we come out so we can demonstrate the amount of moisture needed. The good news, folks, is that you can't get the leaves too wet at this stage. Any extra moisture will drain from the leaves and into the soil. All right. This is what it looks like. This is a school that I work with in the Dublin City area. Um, we're actually was got the leaves on the ground, give them a little water on the ground, mix them up, put them in the cage, mix and water some more. Okay. It's a two-person job. One person waters, the other person mixes. And you're lucky that Bernadine's so generous that she's giving you both a watering can and a lovely German-made 5-prong pitchfork. You lucky ducks. We keep the bin open to the environment because the rainfall, and we do get some of that here in Ireland, will keep things nice and moist. Do fill the cages with wet leaves in early autumn. After, that's like this month in October, they will settle. So at the end of November, early December, the contents of the cage will settle a good, say, 10, 20, 30 centimeters. Okay. And at the end of the leaf season, you can top them up. Now, before you put the lids on, don't overfill the cages because the top layer can dry out and the dry leaves can then be blown away during windy winter weather. After we've attached the lids to the cages at the end of the leaf season, in the summer months, we want to monitor the leaf cage every month or two. If it dries out on the top, which it will, use your watering can and your pitchfork to mix a little bit of water into the top. No big deal. We don't need to turn the cages and turn the materials in the cages. So there's not a lot of work there in the summertime. Now, over time, the contents of your cage or cage or bin will settle. So what we're doing here, folks, is making leaf mold is like making wine. We have vintages. So this year we're harvesting 2025. They work best in sets of 2, 3, or 4 cages together. All right. You're going to get up to 4 cages. All right. After a year, they will settle down up to a quarter or a third of the original volume. In 2026, we don't want to add those leaves on top of 2025. So what we're going to do is in September, say, of 2026, we're going to combine the contents of the 2 or 3 or 4 cages into one cage. So we can keep 2025 on its own. That frees up 2 or 3 cages for you then to put 2026 into. In 2027, you'll harvest 2025. You'll combine the cages from 2026 into one and free up 2 to 3 cages to take the leaves from 2027. The reason we do this is that it makes harvesting the compost easy. Because if we're putting new leaves constantly on top of the old leaves, we can't get the nice finished compost out of the bottom without forking off all the other stuff on top. All right. Okay, we just talked about this. The contents will settle. We're going to combine the cages. Here's a picture in Blanchardstown of 2 cages being combined into one and freeing up the cage for the new season's leaves. Some leaf mold can be ready to use as a mulch in 1 year's time. Yes, if you want to cycle the leaves through your cages on a 1-year cycle and use the leaf mold as a mulch, fantastic. It's up to you to decide how you want to use it. If you want the lovely, golden, beautiful black gold, and you have the patience to wait for 2 years, you'll produce a lovely black and wonderful, rich leaf mold compost, as you see in the picture. You'll find the finished leaf mold in the middle of the pile, often under a dry layer of leaves on top. Now, how do you know when the leaf mold is finished? Well, first of all, we use our senses. We look at it. It looks dark and crumbly. Most of the leaves have broken down. It smells good. All right, so we give it a little snifferoo, and it has a nice earthy soil-like aroma. Okay, that means the smell's ready. And if it's nice, loose, and friable, and it breaks apart easily, then it feels ready. So when it looks dark and a uniform color, and most of the leaves have broken down, it smells good, and it's loose and friable, it's ready, folks. All right, there you have it. Now, believe it or not, here's a cage that's ready to be harvested. It doesn't look that way, does it? It doesn't look like there's any compost in there. But if you have kept track of when you put the leaves in there, then there might be some black gold underneath. So it's always important to poke around, dig down a little bit. What we did was just remove the top layer of dry leaves on the top, and that was what was underneath. Hallelujah. Doesn't that look lovely? Now you can screen the compost or not, depending on how you want to use it. If you want to use it in the soil, or if you want to make a nice potting mix, then I suggest screening it. If you want to use it as a mulch, then you don't need to screen it. All right. And then you can return any undecomposed leaves and twigs into a new or an existing cage, or you can use it as a mulch. So the stuff that goes through the screen as a soil additive, the stuff that sits on top as a mulch. Here's a system at one of the schools that I work with, a great system. There's a little screen on top of the wheelie bin. It's a little bit of the leaves there and the two little bunkers. You can see the finished leaf mold compost in the blue tubs there. Yay, absolutely fantastic. That's what you can get, folks, too. Here's a setup I use. I just have created a little frame out of the cage material where I can then put a bag on it, and then I've got a little screen there that I scavenge out of the rubbish bin, and I a little bit at a time put it in there. I screen and put the finished compost goes into the bag underneath in the frame, and the overs go into the dumpy bag. This is what I harvested out of 2 cages. Wow. Lots of compost, lots of mulch. Lovely, lovely, lovely. There's the mulch. There's the compost. Okay. How do we use it? We use the leaf mold compost in the same way that we use any good compost. We can use it as a mulch where we apply it to the surface of the soil to keep weeds down and to keep the moisture in the soil. But as that mulch breaks down, it feeds the plants in the soil. We can use it as a soil additive or amendment by placing, let's say, 3 to 6 centimeters of the compost on top of a garden bed, using a digging fork to dig and mix it into the soil to a depth of 20 to 30 centimeters, and then it's ready for planting. We can also use it as an ingredient in a potting soil or seed starting mix. For potting soil, it's 1/3 screen compost to 2/3 soil. For seed starting mix, screen compost with half screen compost with half sand. And there's the magic formula. Now, I live near Raheny here in Dublin, in the Dublin area, and I don't know if you all have been out that way, but it has some of the most beautiful hanging baskets in all the Dublin area. And these hanging baskets are going to be beautiful up until halfway through November. And their secret sauce is leaf mold compost. Less watering, slow release of nutrients. The plants are happy. Isn't that wonderful? The plants just love it. All right. That's the quick and easy on how to make the leaf mold compost. It's not that difficult, folks. It really isn't. The hardest part is actually getting the wet leaves into the cage. It can take less time than bagging the leaves, and that's why it's easy, and it's a simple thing to do. One of the biggest issues or problems is the lack of moisture. Now, there are some folks that will actually listen to our suggestions, and there are some folks that don't. And I found recently with my work in Dublin City is that the ladies tend to sort of listen and the guys think they know better. But we were harvesting some beautiful compost this year in two communities in Clontarf and also in this sort of the near the Beaumont Hospital area. And because they were diligently following our advice and getting the leaves wet when they were going into the cage. There was another community, and this one unfortunately was run by a few ladies, and they basically were putting dry leaves into the baskets. And a year later, they emptied them out, and they were dry leaves that looked like they just fell off the trees. No water, no composting. And this is very important. So the leaves need to be soaking wet, going into the cages, and adequate moisture levels need to be maintained afterwards. So this is super important. Always place the leaf mold bin or cage in a shady location so you can maintain that moisture level in the pile that you started it with. All right. Absolutely unreal going to that community. And it was in Castleknock, actually, and 6 cages full of dry leaves. And then they were asking me for new cages. And I said, no. I said, you've got to wet your leaves and show me you can do it right before I'm going to give you more cages. So really, folks, this is very critical. If you want to be successful, it's easy. Leaves and water. All right. The second biggest issue is contamination of the bins with rubbish or other landscape and garden materials. It's important that your sites, your cage locations do not become a dumping ground. At no point do you want to suggest that your neighbors or your people in your state bring bags of anything, I don't, even if it's leaves, to the cages. It is not a good idea just to let the cages be open and let people bring their leaves in. It's not going to work because they're not going to get them wet. And you're going to fill up the cages with dry leaves and you won't make compost. What I do suggest is that you schedule a time to have a nice coffee or tea with fairy cakes and scones. Food always does the trick for people, you know. Or if you're that inclined to have a little wine evening or a little bit of Guinness in the late afternoon or early evening, you can do that as well. And then you have an opportunity to have people bring the leaves from their houses. Again, they're going to store them there until the big day. And then you can control what goes in, and then you can mix and water together as they're put into the cages. Let's make this fun. And that's what I say. It's a nice way to build community. It's a nice way to meet new neighbors. It's a nice way to socialize. Okay? If there's rubbish placed around or on or in the bin, please remove it as soon as possible because you don't want other people getting the idea that they can actually just dump their stuff and have somebody else deal with it. There are some two-legged varmints out there, and they don't read and they don't care. Now, that's not most of people. That's probably 2, 3, 4%. But here's a picture on Griffith Avenue. The cages did settle down after a year. This is when we first started in 2001, 2021, and we didn't have lids at that point. We had 13 cages along the avenue, and some smart aleck landscaper came, and he basically stopped at each of the cages and filled them up with his landscape trimmings. We could tell because it was the same stuff all the way along. One of the ways to avoid this problem is to communicate with your neighborhood, your neighbors. Let them know what's going on. Let them know that this isn't a dumping area. Let them know that they can't just willy-nilly put stuff out there, okay? That you're going to do it together so that you can make a lovely compost that everybody can have. We're going to also place a sign on the bin. Now, I'm hoping that most people will read the sign. And we now have lids for each of the bins. And this does do the trick. It keeps the doggy do bags out. It keeps out any other garden or landscape materials, or any other rubbish. So the two important things that we're going to do here, folks, is put the bins in the right location, give you signs, and give you lids to help prevent any abuse of the cages. These are the lids. They're just made out of the same wire as the cages. I'll give you cable ties to help attach them and show you how to secure them once you've topped up the cages at the end of the leaf season. All right, those are the two biggest problems, lack of water and abuse of the cages by the two-legged varmints. How the program works is that this is a community-led initiative. Meath County Council has been kind and generous enough to fund the startup of the project for your community group or your neighborhood association and supports getting the groups up and running. After that, it is then up to community volunteers to manage, monitor, and harvest the cages and use the compost within your area. In other words, it will be your responsibility to own the project once it's set up. I don't want to hear any crybaby baloney from anybody. It's like the kids that want the puppy at Christmas. All right? I want a puppy. I want a puppy. I want a puppy. And then once they figure they have to walk the dog and they have to feed it, it's like, I don't want the puppy anymore. Oh, please take the puppy away. No, it's not going to work that way. Meath County Council is not going to come out and take your cages away and clean up. It is going to be your project, and it is a gift that is being given for you all to enjoy the beautiful compost that you can make out of this project. All right? So we just want to be crystal clear about that. And if Bernadine, you want to add something to that later, then please feel free to do so after we wrap this up. We provide you with signs. We provide you with any technical advice and assistance. Will help you with picking the right locations. Again, the decision ultimately with yours. You can take our advice or not. It's up to you. All groups will get a site visit and a workshop. Bernadine has been wonderful to schedule you all up for the days, 7 days that we're going to be out there in Meath and do this great work. The program was so well received last year by communities in Ashburn, Navan, and what was the third one? Dunshaughlin. No, Navan. I can't remember. It's but we were in Navan, Ashburn. That's the other one. Ashburn. All right. And so people loved it. It's going well. We'll be checking in with them. Each community group will receive up to 4 cages with lids and signs. Plus, you'll get a lovely pitchfork and a watering can. You'll have all the tools you need to be successful. On the on-site in-person workshops that are coming up, we're going to help you assess and choose the right locations for the cages. I hope you have an opportunity to meet before now and then and pick out your top favorite 2, 3, 4 sites. We will set up your new cages, put them in place. If we need to put the weed barrier underneath, we'll have that for you. We will add lids and signs to the cages, and then we'll talk about how to manage the process. If you have some bags of leaves, we can actually sort of show how it goes and how to mix in water and get the process started. So that'd be fantastic. We can answer any questions you may have. So that's what we're going to do when we come out, when Bernadine and I come out and see you all. And we're very much looking forward to that. So let's open it up for questions. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay. Any questions whatsoever?
Craig, can I ask you, please? Are we doing leaf grabbers as well? We talked about it.
You know, you're right. And I have them. And I will
Great.
remember to bring them.
Okay.
I have leaf grabbers, and I forgot to add that in. You're absolutely spot on. They are.
Great.
I just actually have to bring them down to remember, and I'll remember to bring them. But each
Great.
community will get a leaf grabber as well.
Great.
Any questions? If you have questions, you can type them up into the chat function or just unmute your microphone and fire away.
I have a question.
Okay, Pat?
In relation to using your mower to chop up everything and I suppose increase the decomposition, is
Yep,
that a good idea?
it is. It'll make things go faster. And even if we are cutting the grass and there's a little bit of grass cuttings in it, that's fine. So if you're using the mower to pick up the leaves off the lawn, and it's probably, let's say, the majority, three-quarters of it, three-quarters is leaves, and there's a little bit of grass cuttings in there, no problem whatsoever. Actually, it helps speed up the process. We still need to get it wet though. All right, Pat, is that okay?
That's lovely. I did some cutting there yesterday and it's heating up nice at the moment.
Very good. All right, Helen, you got a question there?
Yeah, thanks, Craig, for that presentation. Always very informative, which is wonderful. I'm not sure how many people I'll have there on Friday. I have at least two. I do have more people interested, but I'm not sure if they'll be there. But is it okay if I have at least two?
Two people are fine. We just need to get a couple folks at least so that we can measure, cut, and build the cage.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be more. I'm just not sure, but I'm looking forward to it. Thanks a million.
Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you on Friday. Anybody else? Just unmute your mic and fire away. Okay, I got a question for you guys because it always comes up and nobody wants to ask it. What about rats? What about them? They're everywhere in Ireland. But there's two things about the leaf mold that's important. Number one, rats do not eat leaves. And because we're not putting food waste or any other things in the cages that they might want to eat, they will not be attracted to the cages. That's summertime. Wintertime. What about the rats nesting in there for the winter and raising the little babies? Well, as we know, the rats are looking for a nice dry location because dry means it's cozy and warm. It's well insulated. If it's nice and wet like it's supposed to be, it's damp and cold and they don't like it. All right, so rats are not going to be an issue. Okay? All right, anyone else? Here we go. All right, we got some activity going in on the chat room. How long does the site visit take? Need to get out of work. Okay, Anya, depending on how many cages you have, but the site visit and depending on how long it takes us to find an appropriate location, if you put all 3 or 4 of your cages in one place and you kind of have something in mind and it looks good, we could finish in an hour, hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half at the most. But the site visits will be at least an hour and could go up longer depending on how many people and how much we have to walk around and look and evaluate the different sites around your neighborhood. Okay? All right.
Craig, can
Yes,
we use pallet bays?
absolutely. Here's the thing. You're going to start to make this stuff and use it, and then you won't be able to make enough of it. So you can use either pallet bays or rope together 4 pallets to create a pallet bin. So that is another way to do leaf mold. So, yes, so that's a good question, Liam.
Uh, Next question. Is it compulsory that it has to be a shady area?
I would prefer that it is a fully shaded area. If it's partially shady,
No
and
shade.
if it's a partially shady part and a little bit of sun, you're just going to have to keep an eye on it and make sure that the pile doesn't dry out too much. But yeah, I want to see mostly shade. And it's
Okay, we've no shade. It's open area because that's the only land we have access to.
all right. We'll take a look because are there trees, Liam? Are there trees on the property?
No, it's
No
the side
tree.
of it's the side of a public road.
Is it a busy, large public road?
Busy, yeah.
Okay, well that's going to be challenging.
Go for it.
Any other possibilities? Is that the only place you could do it in your community?
Yeah, there's no public land down here.
No public land.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go on public land.
Yeah, well, no access to private. Sorry, unfortunately.
All right. Well, and what
We'll
community?
work with it. We'll work with it.
All right, work on it because I mean, there's like I've had a situation like we were in the middle of Roscommon, and the hotel in the middle of town allowed us to use their little back area for setting up a little system for leaves, and you allow their tidy towns to use it. So, the church grounds, the school. I mean, there's plenty of places that we can tuck this in and have it and get it placed somewhere.
Okay, thanks.
Church grounds are great because, I mean, people don't want to abuse the site on the church ground. I mean, that's like sacrosanct. So we find actually that we put a lot of cages in on church ground, and they don't get messed with, which is lovely. All right. Any other questions?
There's a question there in the chat
Okay. All right. Good. Here we go.
about equipment.
Okay. All right. So first, okay, let's see now. All right. Next one is how do we get access? How do we get access to the video? Might be nice to share with our resident group association. All right. I'll get that somehow to you, Bernadine, and you can get it out to people.
Yeah.
All right. Can you use a makeshift shade? Yeah, if you can create shade, fine. I had a one group. I was out in Monaghan, and it was this really posh community, and they really didn't have anywhere to put the cages, and they were dumping everything in the corner, and it's like they were kind of taking the piss out of us. And they said, I said, you don't have any shade here. Oh, we can build a big, huge lean-to or some kind of structure. And it's like, God, they've got a lot of money. It's like, why are they applying for the council for these little cages when they can build all these structures and different things? Look, we can figure that out. You can put up sort of some sort of canvas or some way of creating some shade, and that's fine. I can help you find shade under trees or on the north side of the property or of a building. So we can get creative and find a shady location. Any other tools or materials I should bring? This is what I gathered so far. Gloves, cable ties, cable tie cutters, measuring tape. I have all that stuff. You bring gloves there, Joseph. That's all you're going to be. Maybe you should bring some bags of leaves. Okay, but I have cable ties and measuring tape, and I've got the cutters. I've got everything we need to get this all set up. All right. Let's see. Pat, thanks for that lovely invitation, Pat. That is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, maybe we can go in for a little snack and tea break instead of a little bit of the lounge and a little Guinness. Yeah, very nice. All right. Any other questions? Look, I think the important thing is we're problem solvers, and we'll find a solution if you got an issue or a problem. We'll try to find the best solution. Sometimes there might be a little compromising, and that's fine. I've just worked with a community here in Dublin City where we're going to put it on one side of their building. It's partly sunny, partly shady, and they promised just to keep an eye on things. All right.
Hi, Greg.
Hello.
Hi, Sharon here. I'm just inquiring if there is rain, hail, or snow, is it still going to go ahead on the day?
If it's coming down in buckets, we will probably wait it out or postpone, but basically I think it's going to be rain or shine.
Okay, great.
What do you think, Bernadine?
Yeah, unless it's like, danger to life and limb, in which case we'll consider postponing it. But other than that, I think we'll just wear the gear and
Yeah,
give it a go.
it'd just be a quicker setup.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I was out yesterday and
Yeah.
we had a couple times where it came down really hard. I was
Yeah.
because we just finished setting up and we were going in for a little tea and coffee. And while we were in, it came down in buckets. And I mean, it came down hard. And then the same thing is I'm at another place and we're scouting out the different locations and it starts kind of dripping down. And by the time we got to this fellow's place, it was coming down in buckets, but it was gone in 10 minutes. So
Okay.
we had a nice cuppa and we were then out there and it was all dry and we got everything all set up. So, you know, Ireland, if you don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes.
Okie doke.
If we have to postpone because the weather is really, really, really bad, we will. Okay.
Okay.
We'll let you
And
know.
we'll bring everybody. We'll call everybody as quickly as we
Yeah.
can.
Great.
Let's see. I'm going to look at the weather and see what we got, at least for this weekend. Oh, let's see. Friday looks a little rainy, Saturday's windy, and Sunday looks a little rainy. But we'll look and see if it's heavy rain or light rain. If it's
Okay.
light rain, no big deal. It's just, you know, it's a little soft, as they say here.
We have a lot of ivy in the shaded areas. The underneath, if you cover it well with canvas or that, it'll keep it back. Yes,
That's
Yeah.
sticky. That's what
That's
we'll
it.
do. And we can go in there or we'll find a place that has less, but we'll take a look and we'll figure it out together.
Right, fair enough. We're in an estate, you see, and we have a nice area at the back of a paling, but ivy. But sure, if we cut back the ivy and then put down the canvas, it'll probably solve the problem anyway.
Yeah. Now look, if it's on a wall, fine. We'll just keep the cage away from the wall. All right.
Right.
All right. Anyone else? Going once. Going twice. This is your last chance, folks. If you have any questions between now and then, just save them up. We'll answer when we get there. We will problem solve. We will find solutions. We're not going to force anything on anybody. Just know that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it will be your decision. All right. But we will help you make the right choices. Going once, going twice. Have a good evening, folks. Thank you for
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
See you all soon.
Thank you very much for attending. It was great to see everybody. Looking forward to seeing you all in your communities. God bless and have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
I think all the questions were answered.